Hello everyone, and welcome to my first guide that I have done for the World of Warcraft. This is the Balance Druid 6.1 guide. Why should you listen to me is the main thing. Well, I've been a raider for a significant period of time. I raided back in Vanilla. I did take a break in Burning Crusade, and then I sort of returned around halfway through Wrath, and I've gone through various raids. Primarily, originally the old normal, what is now known as heroic, but I have done several bosses on on what is now called mythic. I joined this guild, my guild on Chamber of Aspects, uh, simply because I knew some of them in real life, and they were originally a hardcore uh, mythic progression guild back in Wrath when I joined them at the start of Cataclysm. And since then, we've sort of been teetering off of that and been going down to primarily focusing on getting at least one or two mythic bosses before the next raid instance comes out. The previous raid instance, Heimel, we only got one down because we were a 10-man guild and we've had to upsize quite dramatically, and we're still trying to find our footing with that. However, I have played the Balance Druid throughout thus far of Warlords of Draenor, and I've got rather good at it, I would say. Usually coming up on most bosses, depending on the encounter type, top couple of spaces is usually where I'm at, even on the non-AoE fights, which is something that a balanced druid excels at. Let's just crack straight into it. The first thing that you'll want to know is talents. Talents. So, in your first set of talents, there are three here: Feline Swiftness, Displacer Beast, and Wild Charge. Now, this actually, for me, is encounter by encounter. Feline Swiftness is pretty good if you know that you're not going to be moving that much, because it only increases your speed by 15%. But if you're not going to be jumping out of any sort of danger, then that's the one that you want to really be going with. However, most of the time I use Displacer Beast. That's what I found has been really good because you can aim with your blink. The only issue that you do have with that is that you do have two global cooldowns, so that's a couple of seconds of turning into the cat and blinking, and then coming out of cat form back into moonkin form. And depending on the encounter, that could be a hindrance, but it's not going to affect your DPS that much. Wild Charge is actually the one that you can see here is bound backward, which is essentially disengage. It's quite nice. I quite like it for Cromug, where in my particular guild we move forward every time the big runes with the hands come up, and then when they've cleared we go backwards. I like to just disengage backwards, and it's a lot quicker than Displacer Beast to get back into fighting. I wouldn't recommend it for most encounters though, primarily because you have to know what's going on behind you. So Handscar, etc. You don't want to be disengaging straight into something that's going to slam on your face and one-shot you, and you'll just look rather silly. Next one, Ysera's Gift, is the only one I would recommend. Only recommend that. The other two are decent, but because they are, again, usable things, they're not quite as easy to manage, and Cenarian Ward is reasonable if you are going to assist your tanks, perhaps, but I really wouldn't. Next tier is completely irrelevant as to damage. Typhoon tends to be the one. It's the most useful in fights. Not that you'll ever really use it for anything other than trash. Just to annoy your tanks, to be quite honest with you. But uh, that's all I would ever use it for. And then level 60. This is where the talents get interesting. Force of Nature is still pretty poor, even in 6.1. Now, the reason for that isn't damage or anything like that. It's the AI itself for the Trents are it's pretty terrible. They're really bad at knowing where they should be aiming. So they're just rubbish. Don't take it. Your choice here is Soul of the Forest or Incarnation Chosen of Elune. I strongly recommend Incarnation. Not only does it look the prettiest, because you get all that lovely armor on your Moonkin form, and the passive, when it's put on, increasing your spell damage by an additional 15% for 30 seconds is huge. It's just huge. Soul of the Forest is decent. It works if with, for example, Balance of Power, or even Euphoria sometimes. But still, Incarnation, go there. Then you have another round of ones that don't really help your raid that much. To be honest with you, I have Ursul's Vortex. I haven't used it in a raid. I don't think I'm ever going to use it in a raid. I had it for Heroic Dungeon once. That's pretty much it. Then here, level 90, Heart of the Wild versus Dream of Cenarius. Nature's Vigil is rubbish. Just completely ignore that. Whereas Heart of the Wild has actually saved my guild a couple of times. It's not like you when it says you dramatically improve the druid's ability to tank. You don't. You really don't. You've got I believe it's 30 seconds where you have to proc it and get into bear form, and then you just take a few hits. It's really not great, but there are some encounters where if your tanks die and the boss has like 2% health left and you're getting to that point, you're just like, oh, we're all going to wipe. You stick that on. You're basically like an evasion tank rogue, where you just stand there, you take some damage for a bit, and you allow others to finish the boss off. You become the king. You are the king. For when you do that, your guild loves you. Now, 6.1 made Stellar Flare interesting. It increased the damage enough that it's viable. I personally have been trying it out on a target dummy today, and I can't get it to do the same damage as Euphoria. Then again, at higher item level and with the 4-set bonus, I can see that actually this would be a pretty good one to use. It's probably going to be the one that you go to when you've increased your item level so that you're full heroic Blackrock Foundry gear. But if you're still like me using some Mythic Hymal gear, some Heroic Hymal gear, and maybe some normal Blackrock Foundry gear, then Euphoria is the one to go for. Euphoria is brilliant. It just makes you work harder, because your bar is moving so much faster that you get into a routine with it, and you know where you're going with it. And so far, as per 6.0, it appears to be in 6.1 doing the best out of the three. Balance of power can be useful, again, Soul of the Forest, if you're in a multi-dotting fight, such as the Maidens. I still would question it. I'd like to see a bit more math being done on this to see exactly when that becomes viable. But at the moment, again, it still isn't pumping out the damage that Euphoria is. And we'll move on to Glyphs. Right. Glyph of Rebirth, you are the raid's resurrector. If you've got druids in the raid, they are the resurrectors. Yes, warlocks and DKs can do it, etc., etc., but you bring back things to 100% health instantly. That's the thing. Warlocks need to cast something, DKs need to generate enough runic power. You do it instantly. Now, I'm quite lucky in my guild that I have a restoration druid who is the guy that does it like all the time, so I can still concentrate on getting my casts off. But I'm there as the backup, which means that this talent, this glyph, is required. Stampeding Roar, interesting one. I prefer it significantly. Nothing else, nothing in the major glyphs really affects your damage. The Stampeding Roar is so useful for raid encounters. Again, go back to Hansgar, and pop that, and save everyone's life. You're the king. Everyone loves you. Everyone loves the Boomkin. Moon Warding. Now here's a controversial one. Right, if you're against something that's going to be hurting you with physical damage, then this is not very useful, because you completely get rid of the bonus armor. But you do gain 10% maximum health, which is really useful for magic damage encounters. So if there's a bit of a mix of damage, then I'd still recommend using Moon Warding. My personal experience is that I've felt like I take less damage almost with Moon Warding, but it's not you're taking less damage, it's just that you've got a bit more health to handle it. So I would go with that most of the time, unless you know the boss's physical damage. Then you're actually going to be saving many heals by not having that on here. Now, then you get to the minor glyphs. There are two here that are really important. A third I would recommend. Glyph of Grace reduces full damage when, well, not in cat form. Speaks for itself. This is the new one for 6.1. Glyph of Untamed Stars. Your Starfall and Sunfall now hit all enemies within 40 yards. Basically, what it used to be. In 6.0, we had the beautiful thing where you could just throw out your Starfall and you'd hit everything instantly. It was brilliant. As long as you're good with it. If you're pretty bad at knowing how to line of sight and things like that, then don't take this glyph. But if you know that how to do that and you know how to work it, then this is what you need to be doing. You need to be able to do that because it will increase your damage that you do. Now 6.1 has actually nerfed Starfall, but not that much. Now, let me explain. In 6.0, you could hit Starfall, and you would have an increase in damage if it was hitting at least 2. That's an increase of damage over Star Surge. It's an increase of damage for only hitting 2. Now they've changed it, so from the calculations I've done and from calculations that I've seen on the web and what other people are suggesting at this point, is that it's actually now 3. So as long as you're hitting 3, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. So that's going to be an increase of damage as long as you're hitting 3 things and you don't have to dot them up first. Pretty useful in a raid encounter. Now here, Glyph of Stars. Now obviously some people love their Moonkin forms, some people don't, and this is a purely cosmetic thing. However, the Moonkin is fat. He is a huge thing. This is a big owl. This is one heck of a big owl. Let me just take it off and show you. That's a big owl thing. That means that when you're dodging stuff, it's harder. Not a lot harder, but it's harder. Chromug, for example, you've got those disc things flying at you. Sometimes there's not that big a gap. You don't want to be sitting in Moonkin form while you're doing it. However, when you're in a progression guild and there's people eating damage, they're just constantly being hit by stuff. If you decide to get rid of Glyph of Stars and you can claim, oh, it's just so I want to make sure that it's not me hitting them, other people will see you. You're massive. They will see that you're dodging them. You're being good. That's a good little tip. Right, also, you get to have the best glyph in the world. Flapping Owl. I'm going to stick that on. Let me get my flap up. No, I can't have it in there. Stick it there. And just, it's beautiful. It's majestic. It's completely and utterly pointless. But it's beautiful. Right. Anyway, let me get rid of that and get back my stars. There we go. Pretty again. Right. Statistic priority. This hasn't changed since the first couple of weeks of Warlords of Draenor. It is still, mastery is equal to crit, but you would still prefer to get mastery over it, even though it is equal. Then you have haste, then multi-strike, and then finally versatility. As we all know, versatility is pretty much rubbish for everybody who isn't a tank. Then we get to the opening rotation. Now, a lot of people have been suggesting that you should maybe, when you have a pull timer on about just after 4 seconds, so about 3.5 seconds before the pull, you pre-pot, then you start pre-casting your Starfire. I do not agree. I have discussed with other Balance Druids on this matter, because I always felt that there was a different way to do it that seemed to be, for me, a little bit more powerful, and they have agreed. Mythic Raiders use this. People who are raiding Mythic content on a Balance Druid do the way I'm about to tell you. What you do first of all is, at about 2 to 1 second just before, you pop your pot and your incarnation. Now you do that to get as close to the pull timer as possible, to 0, so that you can get the maximum use out of both. Then you hit it with a it with a Star Surge on 0, so it lands at the same time that your tank is pulling. Then you hit your Celestial Alignment. Then you follow into the standard rotation. You need to get your your dots up, so your Moonfire, obviously because your Celestial Alignment at this time, it'll put both dots up. Then you're going to be casting your Starfires when you have your Star Surge buff on them. And you're going to keep doing that. And then when you move over to Solar, you're going to be Star Surging, and then you're going to be using Wrath. Let me just show you how that's going to work out. So, pull timer is coming in. Then you go. Right. So, I've done everything that I've said so far, and then I'm also watching the Celestial Alignment cooldown. Right, so I can get in another refresh on the dots just before the Celestial Alignment comes off to maximize the DPS. Always cast Sunfire when you reach your solar peaks, which are right at the end. Moonfire it's useful to do it then. It's not as important as Sunfire because Sunfire does more damage, and it's got a much shorter duration. So I'm going to purposely ignore it just to prove you there. Right, I messed up there because I was talking. That's my personal bad. But what you can do is Moonfire is still there by the time that I reach that peak. And that's basically all the rotation there is. You need to be looking at where you're going, which eclipse status you're in at the time, and then you can follow it from there. You should always be doing Starfire when you're going to be landing the attack in Lunar, and you're going to be landing your Wrath in Solar. Now what that means is that if you're about to transition to Lunar, but you're actually still in Solar, start casting the Starfire. Because there's no snapshotting anymore. You land it in there, you're going to increase the damage that it does. It's that simple. And that's all there is to the rotation. And I guess now I'll just go straight to the hints and tips. So, my UI I find to be incredibly useful. It's Elf UI, pretty standard. You can, you've got all this you can mess around with, but you've got the ability to move everything to exactly where you want it. I think it's clear, and the main thing that it does is put my lunar and solar bar right there in the middle, right where I'm going to be looking. I'm going to be looking at my character, I'm going to be looking at that. I have the peripheral vision of everything around, so I know when I'm not standing in anything, and I can freely see exactly what I should be casting when. Now, the other one that I would recommend, finally, is Power Auras. And you see, what I have is I have, if I just show you that one and that one, actually, I'll just do test all. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Right, okay. So, the ones I have. This obviously isn't here when I'm in a raid, so you can ignore that. Here I have my Starfall. It has a counter on it to tell me how long I've got on it, so I can pop it as soon as it's finished. and that's all that's useful there. So when you're in a AoE damage situation where Starfall is amazing, that's the one you're going to be needing to track. Celestial Alignment. Now I actually have this is a macro which pops both Celestial Alignment and Incarnation. So as soon as that pops up, I know that I've got about a second delay before I need to be popping Celestial Alignment. They both pop ideally when I'm in Luna, and I know that's where my cooldown is. I've also got my Starfire and my Wrath showing me how much of the Star Surge buff that I have available left on it, just so that I can see exactly where I'm going. Now here is the one that I actually put there because I was leveling. I've never got rid of it, but it's still quite useful. This is with your Empowered Moonkin buff, the one where when you're attacking, or when you're being attacked, it suddenly occasionally procs that your next Starfire or Wrath is going to be instant cast. It used to annoy me because I never used to know when it was coming, because it was a little buff up here and then I'd be casting, bam. Whereas if I'm mid-cast and this pops up, like if I've just started to cast and it pops up, I can quickly click with both my mouse buttons, so I cancel it, and then I can press it so it's instant, so it's actually going to be a quicker cast. Because I've seemed to find that when you're casting, if you finish the cast, this goes away anyway, completely negating it. So it's a slight increase in damage because you can clearly time when to do that. And that is my Moonkin guide. I hope you have enjoyed it. As I said, this is my first guide, so sorry for a bit of the rambling there. But I hope to see you on Balance Druids, because we are a special kind of thing. We're so pretty. Especially in our Moonkin forms. Anyway, thank you very much. Goodbye.